Okay, I'm recording. Alright. So, I hope you can ignore the fact that my right headphone is ticking like a Geiger counter. I don't know what's causing that. I don't know how to make that stop. I don't know how to stop that, and I don't even know if you can hear it. So hopefully you can't. Um, yeah, so, with that said, let's begin Chapter 3 of Recovery by Miscruft. And I'm not sure if I'm going to make it through the entire thing. Hopefully I can. I might have to split it in two parts. Maybe I can get all the way through. But just to let you know, this is like an hour and a half after my last recording. So it's the same day. So I might be a little tired. But, I'll keep with the usual strategy of remaining calm, you know. Remaining calm, just breezing through it, you know. Alright, so this is part 3 of the prologue. Black Forest, Peak Girls High. Baden, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Baden-Württemberg, Germany. Why does Reinhardt keep letting him get away? Why doesn't he just shoot him down already? You really have no idea how dogfighting works, Erica. Of course I do. Each team has some planes. They fly around and shoot each other down. And the team that eliminates all other opposition first wins. It's just like tankery. That's an oversimplification. Dogfighting is an art. There's much more to it than meets the eye. Hold on, let me make sure I'm recording. Okay, good. I just had to be sure. Oh yeah, and since when did you become an expert on dogfighting, Maho? I believe it's Maho. I believe that's how you pronounce that. I am so paranoid about these foreign names, pronouncing them correctly. Alright. A girl with light chocolate brown hair that came down to her neck turned to face her friend. Her forehead and eyebrows were partially obscured by a fringe compromising of rich chestnut-colored locks. Her eyes were striking, two large, dark brown orbs that blazed with the intensity of a burning star. Her intense, vehement gaze alone would have been enough to intimidate even the most stoic of men. The girl she sat opposite had long, light brown hair down to her shoulders. Her irises were a brilliant aquamarine. Her eyebrows were raised in a scowl that rarely left her face. They both wore uniforms consisting of a light gray long-sleeve blouse and a dark black miniskirt. The girl with the brown hair pondered for a moment. She smiled in a subtle fashion at her friend. I read in my spare time. It's a pretty good answer. I like that. James had reached 32,000 feet, and his Spitfire was beginning to stall. Every now and then, a small red light would flash frantically, indicating that he was stalling. He would level the plane out, pick up speed, and then climb again. He had been going like this for 10 minutes. As long as he kept doing this, the BF-109s had no hope of getting a shot on him. Excuse me. He knew he couldn't keep this up forever. Despite his additional fuel tanks, he had been flying for nearly 3 hours. Now here's my question. Are those external tanks or internal tanks? Because those are external tanks. Those can actually put drag on your plane. And typically what pilots do, if they are getting into aerial combat or dogfighting, at least modern fighter jets do this. They will drop their tanks because it helps with maneuverability, I think, or aerodynamics. It has some aerodynamic thing with it. But yeah, if you're going on a sortie that's really far away, you'll carry external tanks on you, and then once you reach the operational space, the combat area, you'll actually drop your tanks, to get ready for a fight. I believe that's how it works. Yeah. And in case you're wondering, if you've read my first chapter, why my pilots did not have external tanks to drop, is because like that battle took place pretty close to the Alaskan coast. In case if you're wondering about that. So that's how I'm explaining that. You know. All right. So despite his additional field tanks, he had been flying for nearly 3 hours. I apologize for the rambling, by the way. Eventually, his Spitfire was going to run out of gas to burn and plummet to the ground. If he was going to go out, he was going to go out in style. The world was watching. The world was watching, so why not? He had a friend in the USA by the name of Jason Hernandez, who attended Nevada State High, which is funny because one of the characters in my story, his last name is also Hernandez, which I find hilarious. I need to stop talking about my shit and get back to the story. One of the USA's many dogfighting academies, who had competed in the same competition 2 years ago, narrowly losing to Munich Academy in the final. He and his slick P-51 Mustang gained global recognition, he himself becoming an internet sensation, receiving hundreds of fan letters every day. Oh my god, that must be... that could be both a blessing and a curse. Because blessing, like, oh man, I have so many fans, but like, shit, I keep getting drowned in fan letters every day. This kind of sucks. But, you know, it depends on how you look at it. Glass half empty, glass half full, I guess. And here I am, rambling again. James wondered to himself what it would be like to receive fan mail. He was rudely interrupted from his daydream state, by the bleep of the stall alarm. Mentally berating himself, he leveled out his plane, raised the throttle, and began to climb once more. Looking behind him, only 5 planes remained. One of the Bf-109s had sustained some serious damage to its tail in an earlier dogfight and had been forced to return to base, putting its pilot out of the fight. James, that's actually an interesting thing. You can damage a plane and it'll be taken out of the fight later. You don't have to destroy it right away. That's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool little thing there. James's eyes glazed over the remaining aircraft. They came to rest on the 109 with the black nose. That was him. That was Schneider's plane. At the start of the match, this sight would have terrified him. To be fair, it still did, but this time it was a different kind of fear. It was a fear that could be altered into grim determination. Composing himself, he cranked up the throttle once more and pulled his plane into a vertical climb. It had barely been a minute before the stall alarm began bleeping. This time he ignored it and carried on. Soon he felt the plane losing speed. My fans are roaring in the background. I don't know if you can hear that. Hopefully you can't. The engine strained and roared, but it was evident that gravity was beginning to overpower it. He was now barely traveling above 50 kilometers per hour. He cut the engine. All of a sudden, everything was silent. He felt weightless once again. Is he gonna try to pull off like a Cobra maneuver? That'd be kind of funny. I don't think I've ever seen a World War II plane pull off a Cobra maneuver. That'd be kind of funny if he tried that. I'm not sure how well that would go though. Like, I've only seen jet fighters do that, but I don't know how well that would go for a prop fighter. I don't know. That's an idea. Alright, okay, I lost my place. That was not smart to start rambling. All of a sudden, everything was silent. He felt weightless once again. It was as though he could spend an eon up there. I believe that's how you pronounce that word, eon, up there, up here. with only the thin blue line between this world and beyond for company. The Earth's gravitational pull had other ideas. Suddenly, he was falling. The plane, what the fuck? Alright, the plane was threatening to enter a spin. He stepped on the rudder controls to avoid this, forcing Spitfire into a nosedive. He could see the 109s below him, approaching him. He could see them beginning to stall. He would meet them head-on, strike just as they lost control of their aircraft. He grunted into his mask, psyching himself up for the impending contact. He ignited his engine once more, feeling the wail of the Spitfire resonate around the cockpit. He took aim. His crosshairs came into view of a 109. James did not wait. He grasped the trigger. Oh my god, trigger? What the fuck am I talking about? It's late at night for me, so maybe this chapter will be it. I'm not going to record any more after this chapter is done. I promise. He grasped the trigger and squeezed down, unleashing hellfire from his 8 Browning machine guns. He fired and didn't stop firing until flames appeared around the fuselage of the 109. The plane, spinning uncontrollably, fell back down to Earth, ejecting its pilot. James found another target. Taking aim, he fired. Red tracer bullets slammed into the front of the 109, shredding the single propeller. It went down. The 3 remaining 109s began to return fire. This time they didn't miss. The sound of rounds ripping through his Spitfire made James cringe. He was now approaching and stalling 109s quickly. He was now approaching the stalling 109s quickly. He aimed for the black-tipped aircraft. He aimed for Schneider. A red mist descended on him. He squeezed down on the trigger and did not let go. But Schneider saw this coming. Somehow he managed to roll his plane 180 degrees, taking his 109 out of James's line of fire. One moment he was there, the next he had gone. Every part of his plane out of his crosshairs, aside from the tail. James recognized his mistake immediately and desperately tried to pull up to avoid collision, but it was futile. The Spitfire slammed into the 109's tail, sending both planes spiraling downwards. I don't know if you can hear it, but yes, my right headphone is like having some issues. I don't know if it's dying or it needs to be replaced, or if it's just having, little issues. But yeah, it's still ticking like a Geiger counter. Like I'm getting rads right now. Alright. Sending both planes spiraling downwards. I believe this is where I was at. I hope I really didn't miss any lines. That would be annoying. James had never been in a spin. He only knew that it was a pilot's worst nightmare. There are very few people who could recover successfully once they had entered an all-out spin. Reinhard Schneider was one of them. James Wright was not. Both planes careened downwards side by side. Every now and then, the aircraft's spin aligned such that James could see Reinhardt's plane. Inside the cockpit, Schneider was frantically wrestling with his controls. He somehow managed to recover from the spin, but his tail had been decimated by the muzzle of James's Spitfire. Schneider glanced over at James's spinning plane, his eyes alight with fury. For a brief second, their eyes met. As soon as he was there, he was gone. Schneider bailed out of the aircraft, voluntarily using his ejector system. Thanks to James, his plane had no tail and was... Fuck, I wasn't expecting that. Thanks to James, his plane had no tail. I hope you didn't hear it, but I kind of like bopped my microphone. I hope that doesn't show up in the recording. Um, yeah. His plane had no tail and was therefore unflyable. The flaming Bf-109 spun violently off into the sky, leaving James and his out-of-control Spitfire alone. He felt as though he was in a trance. Everything was so surreal. It may have been down to how he had smashed his head. It may have been down to how he had smashed his head against the control board during the collision. Ow. Ow. It may have been down to the immense G-force his body was experiencing due to the spin. The cause of this feeling didn't matter. The only thing that mattered right now was that he got his plane out of the spin. He forced himself to focus and looked down at his altitude gauge. 10,480 feet. Jesus, had he really fallen that far that quickly? He had lost what seemed like 20,000 feet in the space of 10 seconds. That couldn't be possible, could it? Lethargically, he reached out and grabbed his control stick. He went to pull up. It wouldn't budge. He used his feet to adjust the rudder control, but to no avail. His Spitfire had sustained more damage than he thought in the collision. There was no way he was going to be able to. There was no way he was going to be able to bring this thing out of a spin, let alone land it. Yeah, that's bad. He would have to bail out. Relief began to flood through his partially Oh, whoa! I've actually never seen that word before. Insensate. Shit, dude! I've never seen that word before. Like, that's new to me. Damn, I'm gonna need to Google that shit. Wow. Mind, as he reached for the manual ejector control. What he had done back up there had been pretty decent, even if he said so himself. He briefly imagined what it would be like when he got back down to ground. He would be praised around the entire country for his performance, taking out 3 109 single-handed. Sorry. His collision with Schneider hadn't necessarily been a kill, but it was the first time he had ever been made to bail out of his aircraft in his dogfighting career. James would take that as a positive. He imagined getting back down to ground and being greeted by thousands of adoring fans, all wanting his autograph. He would be a celebrity. He would be a celebrity. He would probably even be invited. Probably be invited onto national television. Okay, I think my fatigue is finally starting to get to me. Because I'm starting to fuck up a lot more. Best of all, he would definitely receive fan mail. He couldn't wait to show off to Jason. Finding the ejector lever, James grasped it. James grasped it. Fuck. Why was that word so hard to say? Preparing himself for a freezing tidal wave of air, he cranked it up. It took some time for James to realize that he was still in his aircraft. Oh, fuck. Rapidly losing altitude and spiraling out of control. He pulled the lever again. Nothing happened. He slipped his right arm out of his restraint and used both arms to pull on it. Still nothing happened. The ejector system had failed. The supposedly infallible ejector system had failed. James's blood ran cold in his veins. He reached up to his headset and tuned into the emergency frequency. He had been drilled on all the safety measures in the book. He knew how to recover from a stall, how to land a plane with no landing gear, and how to stop an engine from overheating and exploding. Yeah, that could be really bad. But he had never been taught what to do if his ejector seat failed, mainly because such a situation was said to be impossible. Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is James Wright, identification number X356. I am in an uncontrollable spin and my ejector system has failed. I repeat, I am in an uncontrollable spin and my ejector system has failed. Due to his head injury, his speech was slightly slurred. Well, you're not the only one, because my speech is also very slurred right now. So we're in the same boat there. His headset spouted white noise. Suddenly a voice appeared. A wild voice appeared. Yay. X356. Mayday call copied. Please eject from your aircraft. James glanced at his altitude gauge, 6,000 feet. Negative. My ejector system has failed. I repeat, my ejector system has failed. James spoke rapidly, the sustained G-force beginning to make him feel lightheaded. Just like reading for long periods of time. Will do to you, will make you lightheaded. I know that feel. The air traffic controller did not respond for a while. X356, are you absolutely sure? Yes, I'm fucking sure. Understood, X356. The air traffic controller sounded visibly shaken. X356, you are headed for the English Channel. Sector 438. You are to ditch your aircraft there and vacate it immediately. Rescue teams have been dispatched. You need to slow down your descent, otherwise your aircraft will break apart on impact. Yeah, that would be really bad. Roger. James's voice was feeble now. His head was pounding and his vision was becoming increasingly blurry. The spin was taking its toll on him. He felt bile rise into his throat. 4,000 feet. He swallowed the disgusting, viscous. I'm not sure how to say that word. Viscous, I believe it is. Acidic substance. He needed to slow down. Fortunately, the spin had become less violent, and he still had some control in the rudders. Slamming his right foot down on the pedals, he managed to slowly bring the aircraft out of the spin and maneuvered it into a nosedive. He felt himself begin to lose consciousness. 3,000 feet. X356. Is imperative that you slow your descent, otherwise the impact will... I'm fucking trying, James yelled into his mask with a renewed fieriness. I'm not sure what... It's one or the other. It's either fire... He's either trying to say... I think it's fierceness, because there's an R in there. Fierceness, I believe it is. I think he just misspelled it. Like, I think the C's missing. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong on that. Fiddling... in any case, we know what he's trying to say. So that's all that matters. Fiddling with his flap controls, he focused on counting his breaths. His lungs were screaming. He ripped off his mask and gulped in the thin, stale cockpit air. He forced himself to think straight. What was he doing? Yeah, keep your mind working, dude. Yeah. Keep your mind, going. That'll help. He looked up to see the choppy waters of the English Channel rushing up to meet him. So if he's looking up, does that mean he's inverted right now? And by inverted, I mean, is he upside down? Is basically what inverted means. So yeah, if he's looking up to see the waters, he must be inverted. Which, yeah. All right. You better maneuver that thing so you don't land that way, because that'd be really bad. Oh yes, he needed to slow down. He deployed the landing gear. Flicking a switch, he dumped the remainder of his fuel. He trimmed the elevator as much as possible, and with barely functioning arms, pulled back on the control stick. The plane slowly but surely began to raise out of the dive. He was now, to some extent, in control of his aircraft. 310 kilometers per hour, 2,000 feet. Come on, mate, he whispered feebly to the aircraft. Get me through this, please. Okay. With all his might, he pulled the stick as far backwards as possible. The nose of the aircraft began to raise, bringing the Spitfire into somewhat of a controlled descent. Once again, he tested the ejector system, but to no avail. He was going to have to perform a water landing. No, it's difficult to do that, but it's been done before, so, at least he has a chance. 1,000 feet. He could see helicopters surrounding his designated landing zone. Some were rescue aircraft. Others were media choppers filming his descent. Ugh. He was gliding at 187 kilometers per hour, 500 feet. The foaming waters looked like the thick saliva of some great beast whose jaws he was flying into. Yeah, I'm getting really tired, dude. Like, I'm having to, reread sentences, unsure if I read them or not. And my chair just popped. Great. His breathing was erratic and weak. 400 feet. He raised the landing gear and the nose of the aircraft as much as possible. 300 feet. He gripped the control stick to the point where his hands throbbed with pain. 200 feet. He closed his eyes and prepared himself for impact. 100 feet. James didn't believe in God. Nevertheless, he prayed. 0 feet. Okay. I believe I can finish this. Yeah, there's not that much left. Yeah. Well, there appears to have been some sort of problem. This is very serious. We don't really know what's happening at the moment, but an emergency has just been called by the match officials and British Air Traffic Control. All pilots have been ordered to return to the ground and the match has been suspended. We believe that it's something to do with the mid-air collision between a Munich Academy 109 and a St. George's Spitfire. What we do know for sure is that an unidentified aircraft has just crash landed on the English Channel. Let's go over to our chopper now. We can see that a Spitfire has just crash landed onto the English Channel. That may actually be James Wright's Spitfire. Why didn't he eject, Larry? Well, I don't know. This is an unexpected and incredibly serious situation. We have reports coming in that there was a malfunction in the Spitfire's ejector system, which is unheard of. I mean, okay, this is bad. We can see the Spitfire taking on water very quickly. James appears to have not exited the cockpit yet, and the rescue teams have still not reached his position. Oh my God, it's beginning to sink. They need to get him out of there. Why isn't he getting out? Okay, we're gonna have to end this here. This is Larry Davidson, accompanied by David Rowlett. I believe that's Rowlett. David Rowlett. Reporting for CNN Sports. Thank you very much. Alright, cut the footage, please. Yeah, right now, we can't show this. Cut the footage. Yeah, so one thing you should know about me, one of my phobias that I have is deep water. Like, the funny thing is, I know how to swim. I can swim just fine. It's just, I'm really scared of deep water. Like, oceans, lakes. My philosophy is, if I can't see the bottom, it's either too deep, the water is either too deep or too dirty to get in. That's my life philosophy there. I'm actually really terrified of deep water. So yeah, I can't imagine being in James's position. When when James woke up, the water was already up to his knees. His hair was drenched with torrents of warm with with torrents of warm crimson blood. The numbness of his legs in the frigid waters compared to the excruciating pain in his head created a horrific contrast. He felt his muscles tense up as his body began to go into shock. He felt himself hyperventilating. He couldn't breathe. His eyes rolled into the back of his head, and once again he lost consciousness. Once more he coughed his way back into waking. The water was now up to his neck. Jesus, what a nightmare scenario. But at least for me, that would be a nightmare scenario. I'm sure it was for him too. He attempted to cry out in surprise, but was too weak to do so, and merely croaked in horror. He went to breathe in, and instead took a gulp of salt water, prompting a coughing fit. He suddenly realized that if he stayed in this cockpit, he was going to drown. He raised his head, sucking in as much air as possible before reaching for a seat strapping. He began to rip each one off as fast as possible. By the time he was free, the water had nearly filled the entirety of the cockpit. He heard the frame let out a sickening wail, and the Spitfire began to sink. Frantically, he poked his face into the air pocket at the top of the cockpit and inhaled deeply. Excuse me, I need to make sure I'm recording. Okay, the recording's still going. We're good. Okay, and inhaled deeply. That's where we were, right? Okay, I'm getting hungry. I need to eat something after this. Good thing I'm almost done. The plane was now completely submerged. Everything was tainted with an ominous dark blue. He sank back down into his seat and pulled on the cockpit release lever. Release lever. With these large paragraphs, it's hard to tell where you are sometimes. Immediately, he grabbed at the top of the cockpit window and began to push upwards with all his might. It wouldn't budge. This didn't deter him. He began to punch it furiously. He kicked it with all the strength he could muster, but it wasn't enough. The pressure was already too much. He looked up at the surface, now retreating away from him at a terrifying rate. He placed his hand against the transparent cockpit window, watching whatever chance of survival he had ascending away from him. He was being dragged down. He wanted to scream, but he had no air left in his lungs with which to do so. The urge to breathe was becoming more unbearable than the desire not to drown. It felt as though there were a pair of hands kneading and tearing at his lungs. He couldn't take it any longer. That is some great visual writing there. Like, that is some great visuals. I love that. He does such a great job with that. And I would argue that his like depiction of aerial combat is very good. I like it. I could actually learn a couple things from it. I would argue that he's actually even more detailed than I am when it comes to like some aspects of aerial combat. Yeah, so I'll stop rambling now. He couldn't take it any longer. I believe that's where I was at. So he breathed in. Salt water rushed down his trachea and into his lungs, filling them instantly. It burned. He felt his chest go into spasms. His larynx closed up. He was now already halfway through the torturous process of death by drowning. His body had become limp, immovable. His hand fell away from the window of the cockpit. A cloudy swirling vortex of blackness began to cloud his vision. moving inwards from the edges of his eyes, threatening to swallow everything up. Damn, such a good description. I love that so much. Soon, the only thing he could still sense was the weak pumping of his heart. It was getting slower. So is my reading, because I am super tired. Good thing I'm almost done. An eternity seemed to pass between each beat. Eventually it ceased. The spinning blackness met in the middle of his eyes. He could see it. He could see it perfectly now. Eternal nothingness. Oblivion. James had always thought that once he had accepted his own death, everything would be okay. He would be fulfilled. He would be calm. He would even feel happy. It would make him feel at peace. He was wrong. It still terrified him. Whew, I made it. I made it. I am too tired to read anymore. I believe I am done for the night. It is past midnight for me. It is almost 12:30. Past midnight for me. I'm stopping. I'm done. There will be no chapter 4 tonight. Maybe tomorrow if I feel like it. Yeah, this author's note here, he's just talking about how, like, certain individuals are actually from the country they represent. Like Saint Gloriana is actually in the UK, you know. Saunders is actually in the US, you know, and shit like that. That's what he's clarifying there. But yeah, very good prologue chapters. And I finally made it through it. I can actually get to the real chapters now, you know, chapter 4 and whatnot. Yeah, oh yeah, these things get longer. But at least, like, the giant paragraphs kind of stop. I don't know. It's hard to keep my place when they happen. When those giant paragraphs happen. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just hard to read sometimes. But, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the end of the prologue, chapter 3. I can't believe I got through 2 chapters today. I'm actually proud of myself. But I am also super hungry, so until next time.